My coach benched me all season and gave my scholarship to his nephew. 4 years later, I was in the pros, and his nephew was begging me for a job. I was the best player on my high school basketball team. Everyone knew it, the stats proved it. College scouts were watching me. Then our new coach showed up, benched me for the entire season, and handed my scholarship opportunity to his nephew, who could barely run a layup drill. What he did not expect was that one college scout refused to give up on me, and the nephew he propped up would end up being the biggest embarrassment in the program's history. Let me take you back to the very beginning, because this story has more twists than a playoff bracket and an ending that still makes me shake my head. My name is Marcus, and I grew up in a small town in Indiana where basketball was not just a sport, it was a religion, it was identity. It was the thing that held the whole community together. Friday night games were the biggest events in town, bigger than the county fair, bigger than the 4th of July fireworks. The gym packed out every single week, standing room only, people lining up an hour before tip-off just to get a decent spot. Local businesses put signs in their windows that said closed early for the game. The barber shop, the diner, the hardware store, all of them shut down so people could watch. And for the last 3 years of high school, I was the main reason they showed up. I started playing basketball when I was 5 years old. My dad, who played in college before a knee injury ended his career, set up a hoop on the side of our garage, and we played every single day. Rain, shine, snow, did not matter. He would come home from his shift at the plant, change his shoes, and meet me in the driveway. He taught me footwork before he taught me how to shoot. He said, "You can have the prettiest jump shot in the world, but if you cannot move your feet, you are just standing still." We worked on fundamentals until the streetlights came on, and then we worked some more under the glow of the porch light while my mom yelled at us to come inside for dinner. By the time I was in middle school, I was already playing pickup games with the high school kids at the rec center, and more than holding my own, I was fast, maybe the fastest kid anyone in town had seen in a generation. I could shoot from anywhere on the floor with consistency, and I had a court vision that my youth coaches said was almost eerie. I could see the play developing before it happened, like I was watching the game from somewhere above the court. I would throw passes to spots where my teammate was going to be 2 seconds before they got there. It was instinct, something I could not really explain, but it worked. I made the varsity team as a freshman. At our school, that almost never happened. We had a strong program with a deep tradition, and freshmen were expected to spend at least a year on junior varsity, learning the system, earning their stripes. But the coach at the time, Coach David Williams, was not interested in tradition for tradition's sake. He was interested in winning. He watched me in tryouts, pulled me aside after the 3rd day and said, "You are playing varsity. Some of the seniors are not going to like it. Ignore them. Just play your game." Coach Williams was a legend in our community. He had been coaching at the school for 22 years. His teams had won 6 district titles, 2 regional championships, and made 3 trips to the state tournament. He was old school, demanding, sometimes harsh, but fair in a way that every player respected. His philosophy was simple and non-negotiable. The best players play, period. No politics, no favoritism, no exceptions. If you earned your spot, you kept it. If someone outworked you, they took it. That was the deal. When he put me on varsity at 14, people in town talked about it for weeks. Some of the seniors were openly unhappy. But after the first game of the season, when I scored 23 points and had 8 assists off the bench, and we won by 30, nobody questioned Coach Williams' decision again. The seniors who were upset at first became my biggest supporters. One of them, a center named Marcus Washington, told me after that first game, "Kid, just keep doing that and we are going to the state finals." We did not make the state finals that year, but we came close. We won the district title and lost in the regional semifinal by 3 points on a last-second shot. I cried in the locker room after, and Coach Williams put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You have 3 more years. This is just the beginning." My sophomore year, I moved into the starting lineup permanently. I averaged 18 points and 7 assists per game. We won another district title. College coaches started sending letters to our school, asking for my film, my transcripts, my contact information. My junior year was when everything went to another level. I was named team captain, averaged 22 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, and led the team to the state semifinals. We lost to the eventual state champions by 6 points in a game where I had 31 points and 11 assists. The gym was packed with scouts from Division I programs. Big schools, the kind you see on television every March, filling out the bracket. I got handwritten letters from head coaches. I got phone calls from assistant coaches who said things like, "We want you to be the cornerstone of our program." Everything was on track. My senior year was going to be the culmination of everything I had worked for since I was 5 years old, standing in the driveway with my dad. A state championship run. A full athletic scholarship to a major program. The dream was right there, close enough to touch. My grades were solid. A 3.4 GPA. My highlight film was clean. My reputation was spotless. Not a single technical foul in 3 years. Not a single discipline issue. Nothing but hard work, leadership, and production. And then Coach Williams retired. He announced it at the end of my junior year. Health issues, he told the team. His doctor told him the stress of coaching was taking a serious toll on his blood pressure and his heart. 22 years of screaming plays over packed gyms, pacing sidelines during overtime games, and grinding through summer workouts in 100-degree heat had caught up with him. The whole town was heartbroken. There was a ceremony at the last home game where they hung a banner with his name and career record. He stood at center court with tears running down his face, and every single person in the gym was standing and clapping. I hugged him after the ceremony and said, "Thank you for everything." He looked at me and said, "Go win a state title next year, Marcus. That is how you thank me." The school posted the head coaching position that summer. I assumed they would hire one of the assistant coaches, guys who had been in the program for years and understood the culture Coach Williams built. Instead, the school board hired an outsider. His name was Coach Greg Tanner. He came from a school 2 towns over where he had coached a mid-level program with a consistently mediocre record. His teams were never bad enough to get him fired and never good enough to matter. Nobody in our community understood the hire. When people asked the school board why they chose Tanner, the answer was vague nonsense about fresh perspective and new energy. Later, I found out that Tanner's brother-in-law sat on the school board. That explained a lot. Coach Tanner arrived in June, right before summer workouts. He was a tall, thin man with a permanent frown and the energy of someone who believed he was smarter than everyone around him. He shook my hand at the first team meeting and said, "I have heard a lot about you, Marcus." It sounded like a compliment. It was not. Within a week, I understood why. Coach Tanner had a nephew named Kyle. Kyle was a senior at Coach Tanner's old school, and in a stunning coincidence that surprised absolutely nobody, transferred to our school the same summer his uncle got the coaching job. Kyle was a decent athlete, I will give him that. Tall, about 6'2", reasonably fast, could make open shots if you gave him time. But he was not special. He did not have the instincts, the vision, the motor, or the competitive fire that separates good players from great ones. I had watched film on his old team. He averaged about 11 points a game at a school that went 14-12. That was fine for a mid-level program. But this was our school. We had a tradition. We had expectations. And we had me. The first red flag came at summer workouts. Coach Tanner installed a new offense, which was fine. New coach, new system. I understood that. But the new system revolved around the point guard handling the ball almost exclusively. And in this new system, the starting point guard was Kyle. Let me put that in perspective. I had been the starting point guard for 3 years. I was the team captain. I was the school's all-time leading scorer and assist leader. I had college scouts from Division I programs planning to attend our games specifically to watch me play. And this brand new coach, who had never won anything significant, walked into our gym and handed my position to a transfer student who happened to share his last name. I went to Coach Tanner's office the next day. I was respectful, measured, everything Coach Williams had taught me about handling adversity with maturity. I said, "Coach, I have been the starting point guard for 3 years, and I have the best stats on the team. I just want to understand the reasoning behind the change, so I can adjust and help the team the best way I can." He leaned back in his chair, looked at me with this blank, almost bored expression, and said, "I need to evaluate the full roster and put the best players in the best positions for my system. This is my team now, Marcus. Trust the process. Trust the process." I would hear that phrase about 500 times over the next 6 months, and every single time, it meant exactly the same thing. Shut up, sit down, and accept it. Preseason games confirmed my worst fears. Kyle started at point guard. I was not even the backup point guard. Tanner listed me as a reserve wing player, coming off the bench in limited minutes. In our first exhibition game, I played 7 minutes. 7. The season before, I played 32 minutes a game and led the team in every single major statistical category. Now I was watching from a folding chair while a kid who averaged 11 points at a losing program struggled to run an offense he clearly did not understand. My teammates were bewildered. My parents were furious, but I asked them to let me handle it. Even the local newspaper ran a story with the headline, "Puzzling Rotation Change Has Town's Best Player on the Bench." When reporters asked Coach Tanner about it, he gave some rehearsed answer about team chemistry, and building a system that does not rely on one individual player, which was interesting because his system appeared to rely entirely on one individual player. It just was not the right one. Meanwhile, Kyle was struggling badly. In the first 5 real games of the season, he averaged 7 points and 4 assists per game, with nearly as many turnovers as assists. His decision-making was slow. His ball handling was shaky under pressure. He got rattled by physical defenders and committed foolish fouls when he got frustrated. We went 2-3 to start the season. The year before, with me starting, we were 5-0. The gym, which used to be standing room only, started showing empty seats. The energy in town shifted from excitement to confusion to quiet anger. I kept my head down. I came to practice early and stayed late. I ran extra conditioning. I shot 500 jump shots every day after everyone else left. Coach Williams had drilled into me that your work speaks louder than anything you could ever say, so I let my work scream while I kept my mouth shut. But inside, I was dying. Because it was not just about the games and the stats. It was about my future. College scouts who had been coming to our games stopped showing up. Why would they? The player they were there to scout was not playing. The calls and letters that had been pouring in slowed to a trickle, then stopped entirely. I could feel my dreams slipping away, game by game, from a folding chair on the sideline, and there was nothing I could do about it. The worst night of the entire season came during Game 11. We were playing our biggest rival, a team from the next town that we had beaten every year for the past 4 seasons. The gym was packed, one of the only sellout crowds of the year, because the rivalry always drew people regardless of how the season was going. Kyle was having the worst game of his life. 4 turnovers in the first half, 0 points. He looked lost out there, dribbling into traps, throwing lazy passes that got picked off, and playing defense like his shoes were filled with concrete. We were down 15 at halftime. In the second half, the crowd started chanting. It started as a murmur and then grew louder and louder until the entire gym was echoing with it. Put in Marcus! Put in Marcus! Put in Marcus! My teammates on the bench were looking at me. The guys on the court were looking at the bench. The whole building was begging for a change that everyone except one man knew was necessary. Coach Tanner ignored it completely. He kept Kyle in the entire game. We lost by 22. The final buzzer sounded, and the gym emptied faster than I had ever seen. People were not just disappointed, they were angry. 20 years of program excellence, destroyed in one season by a coach who cared more about his nephew than winning. In the locker room afterward, the silence was suffocating. Then Deshaun, a senior forward who had been my teammate since freshman year and was one of the toughest kids I had ever played with, stood up and said what everyone was thinking. Coach, with all due respect, this is wrong. Marcus is the best player on this team, and everyone in this building knows it. He should be playing. Coach Tanner's face went crimson. One more word, Deshaun, and you are suspended for 2 games. Deshaun sat down, but the damage was done. The locker room knew. The whole team knew. This was not a basketball decision. This was something else entirely. The something else became clear about 3 weeks later, when my father, who had been quietly and methodically investigating, got confirmation from a sympathetic school board member about what Coach Tanner had been doing behind the scenes. It turned out Tanner was not just benching me to play Kyle. He was actively sabotaging my recruitment. He had been calling college scouts directly, using the school's official phone line, and telling them that Kyle was the team's true star player and the one they should be recruiting. But worse than that, he was spreading lies about me. One scout in particular, a man named James Porter from a respected mid-major program, called my dad and told him something that made my blood turn to ice. Mr. Thompson, Porter said, I want to be straight with you. I called your school to ask about Marcus, and your coach told me that Marcus has significant attitude problems. He said Marcus is not coachable, that he has conflicts with teammates, and that he personally would not recommend him as a scholarship athlete. I have to be honest, that gave us serious pause. Attitude problems. Not coachable. Conflicts with teammates. About a kid who had never received a single technical foul, never been benched for discipline, had been voted team captain by his own teammates, and had a reputation for sportsmanship that was recognized at the district level every year. Coach Tanner was not just denying me playing time. He was poisoning my reputation with every college program in the region to clear the path for Kyle. My dad wanted to storm the school board meeting. My mom wanted to pull me out and enroll me somewhere else for the last semester. But I sat them both down at our kitchen table and made a decision that surprised them. Let me finish the season, I said. I am not going to let him chase me out of my own school. I am going to wait for my moment. The moment came sooner than I expected. Game 19. The first round of the district tournament. Single elimination. Win or go home. The gym was packed because tournament basketball in Indiana is still sacred no matter how bad the regular season was. Kyle started as always. But 4 minutes into the first quarter, he drove to the basket, landed awkwardly, and went down grabbing his ankle, sprained it. Not seriously. Thank God, I would never wish injury on anyone, but bad enough that he could not continue. The trainer helped him to the bench and wrapped his ankle in ice. Coach Tanner had no choice. There was nobody else. He looked down the bench at me and said, with visible reluctance, "Marcus, you are in." I stood up, pulled off my warm-up shirt, and walked to the scorer's table. My heart was pounding, but not from nerves, from hunger. I had not started a game all season. I had barely played meaningful minutes in 5 months. But I had been training like a man possessed, every single day, before school and after practice. Running speed drills at 6 a.m., shooting 500 jumpers after everyone went home, studying film of our opponents until midnight. I was not rusty. I was loaded. I was a cannon that had been aimed and primed for months, just waiting for someone to light the fuse. The fuse lit the moment I touched the ball. I scored 38 points that night. 14 assists, 7 rebounds, 3 steals. I did not just play well. I played like I was trying to compress an entire season's worth of basketball into one 48-minute statement. Every shot fell. Every pass was perfect. Every defensive rotation was a half-second early. Like I could see the future. We won by 27 points, the biggest blowout in the district tournament in over a decade. The gym was absolute chaos. My teammates mobbed me at the final buzzer. The crowd was on their feet, screaming so loud the walls were shaking. Strangers were hugging each other. My mom was crying in the stands. My dad was standing perfectly still with his arms crossed and a smile so wide it looked like it might break his face. And sitting quietly in the upper corner of the bleachers, with a clipboard and a jacket embroidered with a college logo, was a man named Robert Haynes. Coach Robert Haynes, head basketball coach at a solid Division I program, about 3 hours from our town. He had originally come to scout Kyle, based on Coach Tanner's enthusiastic personal recommendation, but what he saw that night changed his plans entirely. After the game, Coach Haynes found my dad in the parking lot. He said, "Mr. Thompson, I need to tell you something. Your son just put on one of the most impressive individual performances I have ever witnessed at the high school level. What he did tonight, after sitting on the bench all season, shows a level of mental toughness, physical preparation, and raw talent that I rarely see. I want to offer Marcus a full athletic scholarship to our program." My dad, who never got emotional in public, shook Coach Haynes' hand and had to take a second to compose himself. Then he said, "Coach, that means the world, but you should talk to Marcus directly. He is his own man." Coach Haynes came to our house the next day. He sat at our kitchen table, the same table where I had decided to finish the season, and he laid it out straight. "Marcus, I am going to be completely honest with you. Your coach called me personally and told me you had attitude problems and were not coachable. After watching you play last night, and after talking to several people in this community who know you, I believe that was a lie. What I saw was a young man who handled one of the most unfair situations I have ever seen with more grace, patience, and maturity than most adults could manage. I want you at my school. Full scholarship, full ride." I accepted on the spot. I shook his hand across the kitchen table and my mom burst into tears and my dad just nodded and said, "You earned this, son." 4 words that meant more to me than any trophy ever could. Kyle came back from his ankle sprain and reclaimed the starting spot for the remaining tournament games. Coach Tanner never once acknowledged what I had done. Not a word. Not a nice game. Not anything. We lost in the second round of districts by 14 points, with Kyle playing 30 minutes and scoring 9 points. The season ended with a record of 12-13, the worst record in our school's history in over 15 years. Coach Williams's legacy of excellence shattered in a single season by nepotism and ego. But this story is far from over. This is where it gets really good. I went to college and I did not just survive, I thrived. Coach Haynes was the opposite of Tanner in every conceivable way. He valued talent, rewarded effort, gave honest feedback, and did not play favorites. I earned the starting point guard spot 3 weeks into preseason. I started every single game from my freshman year onward. Sophomore year, I led the conference in assists and was second in scoring. Junior year, I was named to the preseason All-American watch list. Senior year, I averaged 24 points and 8 assists per game, and led our team to the conference championship and a spot in the national tournament. We won 2 games before losing to a number 1 seed in a game where I scored 29. NBA scouts started appearing at our practices. I was invited to the pre-draft combine, where I tested in the top percentile for speed, agility, and basketball IQ. I interviewed well because Coach Williams and my parents had taught me how to carry myself with humility and professionalism. My college film was comprehensive and impressive. I was selected in the second round of the draft by a franchise that was building something promising. Not a lottery pick, and I never pretended otherwise. But I was in the league, playing professional basketball, living a dream that one petty man in a small-town gym had tried to kill, and I earned every second of it. Meanwhile, back in Indiana, the aftermath of Coach Tanner's reign was playing out exactly as you would expect. Kyle, propped up by his uncle's fraudulent recommendations and doctored highlight tapes, got a scholarship to a Division II school. He started a few games as a freshman and averaged 6 points. By sophomore year, he was coming off the bench. By junior year, he transferred to a Division III school and barely made the roster. He never played organized basketball again after that. His career ended not with a bang, but with a quiet exit from a sport he was never quite good enough to play at a high level. Through no fault of his own, really. He was a decent player, who was put in an impossible position by an uncle who cared more about his own ego than his nephew's well-being. And Coach Tanner? His first season was so disastrous that the school board put him on probation immediately. His second season was somehow worse, 11-15, with 3 players transferring out of the program and 2 more quitting mid-season citing coaching differences. Parents organized a formal petition demanding his removal. The local newspaper ran an editorial titled, "Enough is enough, our program deserves better." At the end of his second year, the school board terminated his contract. But it did not end there. The board conducted an investigation into his tenure and discovered evidence that he had systematically misused school resources to promote Kyle's recruitment. He had used official school letterhead to send letters to college programs that inflated Kyle's statistics, misrepresented his awards, and most damningly contained false and defamatory statements about me. The investigation's findings were shared with the State Coaching Association, and Tanner's coaching certification was reviewed. While it was not formally revoked, the findings were attached to his permanent record, and no school in the state would touch him. He applied to 11 coaching positions over the next 2 years. All 11 rejected him. Last I heard, he left coaching entirely and was selling insurance in some other state. The sweetest chapter of this whole saga happened about 4 years after that nightmare season. I was in my second year in the NBA, living in a city I loved, making more money than my family had ever dreamed of, and I got an unexpected Instagram message from Kyle. I almost swiped past it. Almost. But something made me stop and read. "Hey Marcus, I know this is random, and I know things between us were really messed up in high school. I have been wanting to say this for a long time, but I never had the courage. I am sorry for what my uncle did. I want you to know that I did not understand the full picture until recently. I thought I earned my spot. My uncle told me I was the better player, and I believed him because he was my uncle and my coach, and I wanted it to be true. Finding out the truth about what he did to your recruitment, the things he said to scouts, it made me sick. I feel terrible. I am not playing basketball anymore, and honestly, I am kind of lost. I saw you were doing incredible things, and I was wondering if you had any advice, or maybe even knew of any job opportunities. No pressure if not." I sat with that message for a long time. Read it twice, 3 times. Part of me, the part that remembered sitting on that bench game after game watching my future evaporate, wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to write something cutting. But the biggest part of me, the part that was shaped by Coach Williams and my parents and my grandmother and every good person who helped me become who I am, that part won. I wrote back, "Kyle, I appreciate you reaching out and I accept the apology. What your uncle did was wrong, but I have never held it against you personally. You were a kid in a bad situation, same as me, just different sides of it. I do not have specific job connections in your area, but I will tell you the same thing someone once told me. Find what you are passionate about and pursue it with everything you have. Hard work translates to every field, not just basketball. Stay strong." He responded with a "thank you. That means more than you know" message. We have not spoken since, and honestly that is fine. The chapter closed cleanly. My NBA career spanned 6 seasons. I was never a superstar, and I never pretended to be. I was a role player, a defensive specialist, a guy coaches trusted in the fourth quarter because I made smart decisions and did not turn the ball over. I made good money, earned the respect of my teammates and coaches, and had moments on the court that I will remember forever. When I retired, it was on my own terms, with my body intact, and my love for the game still burning. The day after I announced my retirement, I made another announcement. I was opening a basketball training academy for kids in underserved communities. The kind of communities where talent goes unnoticed because there is nobody fighting for those kids. The kind of place I was lucky enough not to grow up in, because I had parents and a coach who fought for me. I named it Williams Academy, after Coach David Williams, the man who saw a scrawny 14-year-old freshman and gave him a varsity jersey because the best players play, period. Coach Williams came to the grand opening. He was in a wheelchair by then, his heart issues having slowed him down considerably, but his eyes were sharp and his handshake was still strong. When he saw his name on the building, he broke down, tears streaming down his face, gripping my hand so tight it almost hurt. He said, "You were always going to make it, Marcus." From the first day of tryouts, I knew. I never doubted it, not for one single second. Coach Williams passed away the following spring. We retired his name on a permanent brass plaque in the academy's main gym. Every kid who walks through those doors sees his name and hears his story. His legacy lives on in a building dedicated to fair play, hard work, and giving every kid a legitimate chance to be seen regardless of who their uncle is. I think about that senior season sometimes. The frustration of sitting on that bench while a less talented player took my spot because of nepotism. The anger of knowing my coach was actively poisoning my reputation with college programs. The terrifying feeling that everything I had worked for since I was 5 years old in a driveway was being stolen from me, and I was powerless to stop it. But then I think about Game 19. 38 points, 14 assists, a packed gym chanting my name, and a college coach in the upper bleachers, watching me prove something that no amount of politics, favoritism, or lies can change. Talent is talent, and talent cannot be hidden forever. Coach Tanner tried to steal my future and hand it to his nephew on a silver platter. Instead, he destroyed Kyle's confidence, ended his own career, and accidentally created one of the greatest comeback stories in our state's basketball history. Every time someone tells me my story is inspiring, I think about how it almost was not a story at all. It was almost just a kid on a bench, watching his dream die under gymnasium lights. But it was not. Because I refused to quit. Because my parents refused to let me quit. Because Coach Williams taught me that real talent does not disappear just because someone puts you on a folding chair. It waits. It sharpens. And when the moment comes, it explodes. I scored 38 points that night. And I never ever looked back.